In this video, I want to talk about how we can use the built-in functionality of a list view to deal with selections. So we already talked about some of the ways that we can interact with list views, such as handling the onItemClicked event. We also showed you guys how to work with custom adapters. You could, in theory, put those two things together and implement your own custom sort of selection code. So you, like, for example, having a list of checkboxes or a list of radio buttons or something to that effect. However, the list view actually has a lot of that functionality built in, and if you know where to look and know how to set things up, then it can make putting together really simple list views for common operations, such as selecting a bunch of checkboxes or selecting a single radio button. It can make those kind of things a lot easier. So if you know how to do that, it can save you a lot of time. So what I'm going to do in this video is we're going to talk about how we can use the built-in list view functionality to handle selection. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to completely ditch the last example project and just start again from scratch. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to call this ListViews 2, and we'll target Jelly Bean, and we'll start off with the blank activity, and it'll be called main activity. So I just went all the way through that wizard. Let's see what monitor did that pop up on? It's over here. All right, and give it a second to Gradle up. All right, so here is our layout. Let's start with our layout. So what I want to do again is I'm going to use basically the same example as what we had in the last video. We're going to have a customer class, and it's going to have data in it. We want it to stuff it into a list view, or stuff multiple customers into a list view. And in this video, I want to be able to select between customers, either selecting a bunch of them using checkboxes or selecting a single item at a time using radio buttons. So to get started, since we are already happen to be in the layout, let's start with that. The layout's going to be pretty simple. It's going to be basically the same thing. I'm going to go ahead and say list view, and I'm going to say match parent and match parent for its width and height. I'm going to make it self-closing for stylistic purposes, and I'm going to give it an ID. And it's going to be activity main list view. So that's our list view, pretty straightforward stuff, the same thing that we did in the last video. So this is the thing that we're going to be populating with information. Now, before we jump into main activity, I am going to go ahead and create our customer class. Since showing these examples, I could easily do these examples showing you guys how to deal with primitive objects, such as integers and strings and all that stuff. However, in more real-world scenarios, you're typically going to be stuffing either a DTO or a domain object into your list views, and it makes your code a lot easier to work with. So that's what we're going to be doing in this example. So I'm going to go ahead and jump over here to my packages, or my package, and I'm going to right-click and select New Java Class, and I'm going to name it Customer. And that is not even close how you spell customer. I did actually recently get a new keyboard, so I'm still kind of getting used to the layout here. In this case, our customer, we're going to go ahead and give him just a name, not a first name and last name. I don't want to make this too complex. And we're going to give him a getter, or give him a getter. Yeah, that's right. And we're going to generate a constructor. Again, I generated that constructor by hitting Alt, Insert, Enter. Next up, we need to implement his toString. If you recall from the last video, when we deal with array adapters, which we're going to start off dealing with array adapters in this video, you need to have a proper implementation of toString so that the array adapter knows what text to extract from your custom object. And so we can do that by hitting Alt Insert, typing in OVE, whatever, to start typing in override, hit Enter, start typing in toString and hit Enter, and then change the implementation to what you want. So it's really important in Java, especially considering how verbose Java can get, to really, really internalize these keyboard shortcuts. And I encourage people to do that and definitely practice them. And that's why I kind of make a point of using them in these videos, so you guys can get some practice in on them, because it will make your life a whole lot easier. All right, so here's our customer class. Just has one field. You can imagine it having as many fields as you need, of course. Let's jump into our main activity now. Now, inside of my main activity, we're not going to be using our action bar in this video, so I'm going to nuke these two methods that come along for the ride in the template, and that will just leave us with the onCreate method, and that's where most of our logic is going to be. So, all right, the first thing I want to do is I want to create my adapter. So I'm going to make, in this case, I'm going to start off by making an array adapter, and that's because an array adapter is simple, and again, it'll also show a really quick way to work with selections. So we're going to say array adapter of customer, and we'll call this adapter, equals new array adapter. We don't need the to do a redundant type annotation there, or redundant generic type parameter. For the parameters, or for the arguments, I'm going to pass in this as the first argument, which is the context. Now, for the second argument, I'm going to be passing in a layout. Now, what's interesting is I'm going to be passing in a layout that comes from the Android SDK, and what's cool about this layout is already all set up to work with the concept of selections. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say Android.R. Now that's important that you specify Android.R because your R will be different than Android's R. .layout, and then we're going to pass in this case, we're going to start off with simple underscore list underscore item underscore single underscore choice. A lot of underscores there. Next up, what we're going to do is we are going to, I'm not going to worry about passing in an array of objects in this case. Normally, I'd worry about passing in a ID of a text item because both of that's redundant. Simple list item single choice is capable of being used with the array adapter without specifying the ID of the text view that the text goes into, which means our array adapter is now finished. We have now instantiated the array adapter that's required to work with customers and selection modes. So the next thing we're going to do is we are going to configure our list view. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say final list view equals list view, find view by ID, r.id.list view. Oop, I messed that up. List view. So a lot of list views. I am marking this local variable as final, and I'm doing that because later on we are going to be accessing it from within an anonymous inner type, and that's going to require us to mark it as final. Now that I have the list view, I suppose the first thing I might want to do with it is set my adapter. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say listview.setAdapter, and that'll set the adapter up. So with that all out of the way, let's go ahead and add items into our adapter. So we've, I'm going to say for int I equals 0, I smaller than 100, I plus plus, and I'm going to say adapter dot add new customer, passing in a name of customer spate plus integer dot toString I. Of course, in Java, the int type is an unbox type and does not have any member functions on it. And so as a result, you have to pass it into the integer.toString method to convert it into a string. Also, it would be slightly more performant if I suppressed notify changed while doing this, but that would just complicate the example. Okay, so now let's go ahead and hit play just to get a general idea of what our app looks like so far. Because it's going to look and behave, it's not going to behave in the way that it looks right now, because you'll notice we are using the simple list item selectable layout, but we haven't done anything with the list view to make it cognizant of the fact that we want to handle selections. So now what you see is this. So this looks very similar to when we previously had our array adapter using the simple list items, but the obvious difference is there's a radio button on the right-hand side. Now, that's actually really not a radio button. It's actually fake. And it's really what's going on here is this simple list item single choice layout happens to support a particular kind of interface on it that the array adapter, or rather the list view, understands. But when I click on these items, you notice that nothing happens. And that's because we have not told the list view that we want it to manage selections, nor have we told the list view in what manner we want the list view to handle selections. So to do that, I'm going to come down here to the bottom of the onCreate method, and I'm going to invoke a method on my list view to tell it that I want it to track selections. I'm going to say listview.setChoiceMode, so the setChoiceMode method, and listview.choiceMode single in this case. And now I'm going to hit play. So choice mode single informs the list view that I want it to behave like a group of radio buttons, which just so happens is what that particular layout looks like. So if I go ahead and click on items, check that out. Now our fake little radio button guy over there is changing depending on what item we've clicked on. And also notice how it behaves like a radio button. As we select a different item, the previously selected item is deselected. All right, so that is our choice mode single. So at this point, you might be wondering how you would go about dealing with an event of when a particular list item has changed being selected, and even how to determine if a list item is selected and so on, and if it's not, and then also to get the currently selected item. Now, there's a bunch of methods on the list view that have to do with the concept of selected and checked. I really want to point out that there's a big terminology difference with the list view with selected and checked. There's kind of an overlap, unfortunately, in some of these things where selected is used and checked is used interchangeably, but they're actually two different things. The selected, so like for example, set selection, or sorry, where are you? Set on item selected listener actually has nothing to do with the checking of the list view items and won't actually do anything. The set on item selected listener, the whole concept of selection with the list view has to do with Android devices that have a physical D-pad on them or maybe lack entirely a touchscreen. Now, that's not the case of most Android phones anymore, and you'll notice that not many new applications deal with selection whatsoever, so you can safely ignore that method. I just wanted to point it out because it looks like it'd be a event or a callback that would be used to handle the case when an item gets selected, because that's its name. It's just important to understand the terminology difference. Now, the thing that we're wanting to look at is the concept of things being checked. So if we type in checked right here, we'll get a nice list of all the different methods on this list view that we can pretty much guess at what they do. For example, right here, what you see is highlighted is item checked into position. So we can determine if a particular item is checked, or we can tell the list view to check an item. We can, for multi-select, we can get arrays of selected items, and so on. Now, for handling when an item has become checked, what I would do is set a click listener. So I would say set on item click listener, new on item click listener. Of course, to generate all this, of course, we type in O in capital O lowercase n inner, and it'll generate that for us. So from within this, what we can do is we can say we can say customer. I forgot to set the adapter to final, didn't I? The adapter is being, when I hit enter, IntelliJ is changing the adapter local variable to be marked as final. Of course, we need that because we're accessing it from within an anonymous inner type. And then we'll do get item and position. And then what I can say here is something like toast. I really like toasts. Make text, main activity, dot this for the context. For the message, we can say selected customer dot get name. And for the duration, we can do short, and we'll invoke show. So that's how you would deal with that. So, yeah. So now let's talk about multiple selections. Multiple selections are really straightforward. Basically what you do is down here, when you tell the list view that you want it to track selections or track checkedness, instead of passing in choice mode single, we can instead pass in, not surprisingly, this shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone, especially people who saw the autocomplete previously, choice mode multiple. So just switch that over, and we can immediately hit run, but what'll be interesting here, just give it a second to spool up. What'll be interesting is now we see that these items are behaving in the way that we expect them to. You'll notice that the list view layout didn't change from a radio button to a checkbox. And the reason that this is important, the reason I'm pointing this out, and some people might be saying, oh, that's really obvious, but I'm really stressing the fact that the whole choice mode thing, setting the choice mode of a list view changes how the list view deals with the checked items, deals with items being checked. However, that has nothing to do with the way that the layout itself is presented to the user. So in order to make this layout more consistent with common UI paradigms, what we can do is we can come up here to our array adapter and actually change the layout that's going to be used for our list view items. And we can change it to simple list item multiple choice, which also shouldn't come as a surprise. Now when we hit run, we get checkboxes. So isn't that awesome? Furthermore, let's say I wanted to go ahead and handle write some code that will show me the list of all of the currently selected customers when they become selected. So what I would do here is go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and use a string builder for this. And I'm going to enter a loop, and for every selected customer, I'm going to add a thing to the string builder. So to loop over all of our items, all of our items that have, or all of our items that are checked, what we can do is we can use the ListView.get selected, or sorry, get checked item positions, which returns a sparse Boolean array. So I can say sparse Boolean array, and I can say checked positions equals ListView dot get. Really bad at typing today. Get checked item positions right here, and then what I can do is I can say for int I equals. Ooh, missed the I entirely. Int I equals 0. I smaller than ListView dot get item count, or sorry, adapter dot get count I plus plus. And then what I can do is I can say if checked positions dot get at I, that means this item is selected. So I can say customer selected customer equals adapter dot get item at I for the position, and then I can say builder dot append selected customer dot get name plus space in this case. And then finally at the end, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this toast and I'm just going to paste it down here, and I'm going to replace the text with selected, in this case, builder.toString. So really what we're doing is we're getting a sparse Boolean array out of the list view, and we're looping through all of the possible positions of a customer. We're checking the sparse Boolean array if it has an item there, and if it does, then we go about adding that item to our string builder. All right, so now I can go ahead and hit play. Yes, I know I'm doing string concatenation in a string builder. You don't have to remind me, IntelliJ. I can go ahead and select a couple customers, and now watch the next toast. See, the next toast has that, and the next toast. So, as you can see, we are getting a list of all of the selected customers, which is pretty awesome. So yeah, that's basic choice mode stuff. And we're going to see in the next video, what I want to do in the next video is show you guys how we can make this work with custom layouts and custom adapters, because there's a little bit of more work that we have to do to make this work with custom layouts and custom adapters. So I think though for this video, I think that wraps this up, and we'll see you guys in the next one.